Mindscape published 20 Nintendo games according to NESguide.com, and going to review and rank them along the way in this regular series I've been doing for quite a while now, featuring a lot of other video game companies. But today it's all about Mindscape and the crazy games that they've had. There's some popular ones on this list, a few of them you've never heard of. Maybe some of them just kind of flew under the radar for most people because they came out later on in the NES life cycle. Gonna be some interesting games along this list. I'm looking forward to this video, including 720. Oh man, what a cool arcade game this was. This was like during the height of skating, when like skating was like, and I say skating, I mean skateboarding. I mean, with all the things like the Bones Brigade and the Vision Streetwear and all that, and I mean, skating was huge, and the arcade game was great because the joystick looked broken, but it gave you that chance to swirl it around so you can go off these ramps and try to go for a 720. I don't think I've ever landed one ever on this game, but I certainly want to do it. Kind of a fun game too. You're in this little world, this little city where these ramps are everywhere and everything like that, but you go through the different paths. So you can go to one path and I'll give you like the downhill slalom. So you're like going down this hill trying to go through the poles and all that. Oh, there's like a height one, like you're on a half pipe and trying to do what you can there. Totally fun game, especially for the arcade. The NES though, a little bit more harder to control, especially with the D-pad. NES Advantage, a little bit easier, but the D-pad, it was pretty rough, man. I just wanted to skate around and have fun. But you're under the timeline, you're under the crunch of the clock, and you're under the crunch of the bees. And the bees, oh my goodness, how annoying these bees were. It would say skate or die. Before Skate or Die said Skate or Die. The game would say Skate or Die, and then if the bees get you, then the bees would shapeshift too, like to look like a hammer, like they're going to hit you and all that. And if they hit you, well, then that's you lose a life for doing that. But 720, I think it's actually technically called 720 degrees. Everyone just calls it 720. Great game. The NES, much to be desired. I'm gonna give, as much as I love the arcade game, I'm giving this game a C on the NES, just because it's a lot harder to control, and it didn't have to be, but it was. Alfred Chicken, another game that just looks European, feels European, kind of a decent game. You play as, I'm assuming Alfred Chicken, right? And you're collecting these items, and you can dive bomb these enemies, and that's how you attack them. That's how you get rid of these enemies that are in your way. These platforms make you jump higher. I thought it was pretty creative, the different ways you die. Like when you die, you don't just blow up and disappear, but like, the feathers kind of fall to the ground and stuff like that. This game I didn't get until later in my NES collecting, and I mean, I don't have any qualms with this game. It's okay. I'll give this game a C. Battleship, based on the board game, I guess you'd call it a board game, was one of my favorites when I was growing up. I was a big fan of Battleship. It was just fun for me. Now, if you're not familiar with Battleship, or you've heard of it, but you're not really sure what's going on, you place your pieces on the board just like they place their pieces on the board. These pieces are ships. And then you fire, and then they fire, and you have to let them know if they hit you or if it missed, right? And then if they hit you, then you have to figure out, okay, well, I don't know what ship it is, but it's either going to be, going up or down or left or right. They never go diagonal. And you just have to like keep hitting them until you sink the battleships, and when you've done that, you've won the game. What I like about the Nintendo version, this NES version, is it's not just firing back and forth. You can also fire like other missiles, so it does like 5 at a time, and takes care of more area or more of the battleship, as it were. Per round, and you have a limited supply of those. You have an unlimited supply of just like one-on-one, but you can do these other special missiles to clear out some extra space. Fun game. I still don't mind going back to this NES version and playing it every once in a while, just because I think it's pretty cool. I'm gonna give this game a B. Captain Planet and the Planeteers was a popular cartoon that was all about saving the environment. You have the 5 forces that come together. I'm not going to repeat them in this video, but you know what they are, and I feel like I have to. It was Earth, Wind, Fire, Water, Heart. And Heart was the 5th one, sure. By those powers combined, it summons Captain Planet, who helps save the day. I don't know why Captain Planet just doesn't take care of business in the first place, but maybe it's up to the kids, and maybe that's the underlying, I never thought about that, maybe that's the underlying message, is it's the youth of today, it's the children of today who can make it different on tomorrow's planet. But then every once in a while, they need that extra help. When you put all their powers together, they're unstoppable. I think maybe Captain Planet's a figment of their imagination or something. I don't know. I'm thinking too deeply into this. I'm talking about the video game, which sucks. The Nintendo game, it starts out like a shooter, like it should be a shooter. It should be a great shooter. Super difficult. One hit kill. You're done. And then there's other parts of the game where you actually play as Captain Planet. Now, if the whole game was this part where you play as Captain Planet, it wouldn't be as bad, I don't think. You can use your powers while you're flying around as Captain Planet. You can use the power of water or fire. You can use the powers of Earth. You know, whatever you need for the situations to get you through these kind of like corridor maze type, levels where you're flying around and doing all that. It should be a great game, and it's totally not. And I think I want to, just because, I want to give this game an F. I'm going to give this game an F. When you're flying around as Captain Planet, it's not as bad, but it's still pretty bad. Combined with the terrible shooter element to it, this game's an F. Championship Pool, another billiard game for your NES, and it plays like a decent pool game. I mean, it's pool. You're shooting pool. You're shooting stick. You're playing billiards. A couple of different modes in this game. It's pool. It's a C. I don't need to tell you much more than that. It's okay. Yeah. Quarter of the way there, 5 down, 15 to go, with Conan the Barbarian. Now, this game has to be based off of a PC game at the time, or a computer game at the time. It just feels like that. And this game is also pretty terrible. Jumping mechanic is terrible. The fighting mechanic is terrible. It's so hard to get through even the first area. It's hard to get past this little first thing that you're trying to get through, and you can't, because it's not letting you. To the point, I've never gotten past this little first part of this game because I just lost interest. I was like, well, okay, I guess I'll move on to a game that makes me feel a little bit better about myself. Conan the Barbarian. Is it better past that part? I wouldn't think so. I'm giving this game an F. We have Days of Thunder, and if you're familiar with this channel, this is not the found version of Days of Thunder. This is the commercial version of Days of Thunder. This is the commercial one. You buy it at the store, you rented it, you pick it up at conventions. This is typical Days of Thunder. It's not a terrible racing game, but it kind of is. It's Days of Thunder. You have to qualify for your track, and then once you're qualified, then you can race along with everyone else, and that part looks kind of cool for a racing game. Makes me a little bit dizzy playing this game, playing Days of Thunder. There is a pit stop mode where when you go into the pit finally, and that's when you can replace your tires, fill up your tank of gas. This part's actually kind of difficult because you're trying to maneuver all of these characters around your car to get them to do certain things like that. It's interesting enough, but still not as interesting as far as racing games are hit or miss with me, and this game, I'm gonna call it a miss. I'm gonna give this game a D. Dirty Harry allows you to play as 8-bit Clint Eastwood in this game here. Maybe a little bit like a RoboCop, where you're fighting the enemies. You can punch them, but you can also whip out your gun and shoot them. I mean, you're Dirty Harry after all. The levels are interesting too, because sometimes it's just like a side-scrolling part, but then you're like, oh, I'll go down the alley, and there'll be something on the other side of the alley, or you can jump in the sewers, and you can fight enemies there too. Interesting gameplay going on with this one. They decided to make a Dirty Harry game. Mindscape made a lot of movie licensed games, and Dirty Harry happens to be one of them. And I'll give this game a C. Flight of the Intruder, again, has to be based on a computer game. It just has to be, right? It gives you that. I compare old games that look like this to Top Gun for the NES, and it's a lot like Top Gun, only this one, you're unlocked so you can actually do flips and loops and turn around, and you're just fighting off the enemies in a first-person flight game for the NES. And I think it looks pretty cool. It's just more of the same with Flight of the Intruder. I'll put this game as a D. Gauntlet II. Now we're talking. Quite literally talking. This game actually speaks to you. It actually says, welcome, Red Warrior.
Welcome, Red Warrior.
It'll actually say things like, like Blue Valkyrie is it. Yellow Wizard shot the food. That was kind of funny. Gauntlet II utilizes the 4-player controller, the satellite or whatever, so you can actually play 4 players simultaneous in this game, which is what Gauntlet's all about, man. It was like one of the perfect couch co-op games, or shoulder co-op if you're playing at the arcades. Tons of levels, some fun, kind of creative maze levels. A lot of the levels are kind of basically the same. You just have to work your way to the exit. And then sometimes there's extra exits that will maybe warp you to a few levels past, warp 5 levels into the future or something like that. You can fight off the enemies. You can also attack them by just running into them and hitting them. And you have to defeat the enemy bases so they stop coming out. I always thought I felt a little uneasy anytime the ghost would enter you to take damage. Like the ghost would go into you. You just absorb the ghost. And then there's if there's a swarm of ghosts and you're right in the middle of it and they all just absorb you from all angles. I was like, oh, that can't be fun. right? Gauntlet 2, a lot of fun, a lot of gameplay on this one. I'm going to give this one, believe it or not, gonna give it an S. Fun game, graphics were great alongside the arcade game. You can play it as a one player, but definitely better with multiple players. And I love the music too. I love that music. I should give this game an A just based on the sound it makes when you step on those stun tiles on the floor, but I'm not going back on my word. I'm gonna give this game an S. Interesting list so far, halfway through the games, and we still have 10 more games to go. Right on. Infiltrator, I like half of it, and I don't like the other half. I'll tell you the half I don't like first, and that's when you first start playing it. Because you're in this helicopter, I believe, and you have to like fly the helicopter by leaving the ground, and there's all these buttons on the side. It's one of those things, if you're just going to pick up this game for the first time, you're going to pop it in as an emulator, you find it at a convention, no manual, no instructions or anything. You're just like, you keep crashing because it's like you don't know what of the buttons do. So that's really rough right from the start. However, you can play the next part, which I do like. And this is before there was like Metal Gear Solid. We had Metal Gear, but we didn't have Metal Gear Solid. This was the fun part. This was the sneak around the base, infiltrate the camps, go in there. You can put on like the enemy's clothes and they don't question you, except for like if they're like a higher commanding officer or something like that. They ask for your papers. If you don't have the right papers, that's game over. There's some fun going on with this part too. So I like that part. Don't really care for the helicopter part, but I'll put this game as a C. It only makes sense that they had a Last Starfighter video game. Now, the Last Starfighter is based on a movie that's about a video game. I mean, the whole idea with Last Starfighter is, a kid was playing this game, he got the high score, and then but the aliens or whatever used this video game to recruit for their star fleet. It's been also 35 years since I've seen this movie. I'm pretty sure that's the plot, though. I have a picture book in the other room from way back in the day. But the Nintendo game is based on just the flying around space and shooting enemies, and not very well. It's a horizontal shooter, and you can switch angles. You can switch directions. So you can like fly this way, then you fly the other way. Super difficult. One hit kills. There's stuff in the way that if you run into it, you'll explode, you'll die. And then the ships themselves, you can go super fast, you can go super slow. It's still not going to do you any good. Super difficult level rating on this one. Last Starfighter, man, I wish it was a better game, but I'll put it as a D. I have a love-hate relationship with loops. There's a Z at the end of it. That's how edgy this game is. Puzzle game, you have to place the pieces on the grid, and if it makes a complete loop, it makes those pieces disappear. Cool. I keep getting the rotate button and the drop button mixed up every time. And you'd figure if I play it long enough, I would get used to it, and I never do. I really don't. I wish I did, but it's just I don't. I end up putting the piece in the wrong place or at the wrong angle because you can flip the pieces around. Some of them are longer than other ones. Some of them are more obscure than other ones. And it's like, oh, I want to put it here. I'm going to rotate it, and instead of rotating it, I drop it, and then it's too late. I was like, oh, seriously. I like this game. I just don't like the controls for it, but I still like this game. I'm going to put this game as a B. I've told this story on my channel before, but Mad Max I have a fond relationship with because when I was in middle school, our teachers in our school district went on strike. So instead of going to school for the first day of school, I was like, well, I'm staying home anyway. I may as well rent a video game. So I went down to my local grocery store because we could rent games there too, and they just got in Mad Max. So I rented Mad Max. So I'll always have that fond memory of not going to school for the first day of school. And playing some Mad Max. The strike worked, the teachers got what they wanted, school is back in session 2 days later, so having an overnight rental worked out perfectly. And the game itself, it's okay. I kind of like it. You drive around and you can use your dynamite to blow up these bases, blow up the other cars. There's a part later on too when you're actually in the area where you can like knock cars off their, knock them into the nether, defeat the other cars. Thunderdome, right? I don't know. I still haven't seen the movie. I'll put this game as a C. I think it's fun. It's okay. It's fun to check out. Mule is an interesting one. Mule has to have come, again, this is another one of those games that had to come from a computer game. Now, console gamers like myself, they play Mule, a little confusing, don't really know what's going on. But I have some friends who are Mule fanatics. I mean, there is an element to it. There is a tactical procedure to playing this game. It's there's a huge Mule community that is out there. Now, this list is based on my own opinion. Right? So never mind their opinion. My opinion is it's weird. You start by choosing your character. Decent speech in this game as well. You start by choosing your character. You then go buy like a mule or supplies, and you put them at base, and you have to capture the wampus or something like that. There is some interesting things going on with Mule that I have never got into. Now, this game is also 4-player, so maybe it's better as a 4-player, especially when the other players are kind of training you or teaching you. Maybe that's what I need with this game. In the meantime, I'm giving this game a D. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you're subscribed and consider joining the Patreon. Really helps out the channel. Paperboy was a very interesting game for its time. I loved the arcade game because it actually had the bicycle handlebars as your controller, which I thought was pretty cool. The game itself is a little bit more difficult than it should be. You play the role of a paperboy. You're going down the street and you're delivering newspapers. You're delivering the papers to people who have subscribed, and then if they haven't subscribed, go ahead and trash their house. You can toss papers through their front window, knock stuff off their banister or something like that. There's like other enemies in the way too. There's like a mom. There's like somebody skateboarding or somebody breakdancing. There's like the Grim Reaper shows up. There's go-karts and stuff like that. This game is definitely an interesting one for sure. The cool thing is, if you deliver all the right newspapers to all the right houses, then you'll get more subscribers. So then you can actually, get more points by delivering more newspapers. You don't get them all, you're gonna get people who unsubscribe, especially if you're delivering the newspaper and you end up tossing the newspaper through their window. They're not gonna like that. And then for some reason, at the end of every level, at the end of the block, there's like this BMX course or something that just shows up out of nowhere. It's like, okay, sure. Paperboy's kind of fun. I want to put this game as a B. It's really difficult, and I kind of suck at it, but I still like coming back to it. I think it's fun. It has a funky theme song to it, too, when you're playing. It's really cool. Paperboy 2 was more of the same. This one lets you play as the boy or girl. Girls can deliver newspapers too, don't get it twisted. And it has the idea where you can toss papers on one side or toss papers on the other side. You actually like turn the corner and go down a block, and then newspapers are on one block, or this side or that side. So that was kind of cool. It switched up the gameplay just a little bit, just enough, so it's like, oh, it's still a familiar game, but it has a little bit extra addedness to it. With Paperboy 2. And Paperboy 2, I view it kind of like Paperboy 1. It's okay. It's all right. I'll put this game as a B as well. Road Blasters, super fun. This game could have been a Tengen game, but I'm glad Mindscape picked it up for this official release. You start by choosing your route. It's a racing game, but it's more of a shooting game. You do have a race against the clock. You have to pick up these green orbs. That'll be your gasoline to get you to where you need to go. But you also have your gun. And you can shoot these other enemies. And then other times, a thing will drop from the sky that will give you like a machine gun power, or like, hyper turbo speed power or something like that. There's some fun things happening with Road Blasters. It just looks kind of cool. Super arcade style shooting game. This looks like the kind of game that doesn't even exist. It looks like the kind of game that they'd be playing on a TV show. Like, that they just kind of made up for the purpose of the TV show. Fun game, though. I'm a huge fan of Road Blasters. I'm going to give this game an A. Round ball 2-on-2 is basketball. Why do you call it round ball? I mean, are you not using a basketball? Can any ball work as long as it's round? Well, it's 2-on-2 basketball, and it plays actually kind of decently for a basketball game, but it's missing all the great elements of some of the other great basketball games that make you want to play it. I don't know if it's just because it's a 2-on-2 thing. I mean, really, the only reason why it's 2-on-2 is because it lets you play with 4 players. It's a 4-player simultaneous game, so gotta give props for that. However, it's still just kind of like a mediocre-ish basketball game. The shot projecting, like where you shoot the baskets and all that, a little difficult to get used to. I've tried getting into this a few times. I haven't got into it as much as some of the other basketball games. I'll put this game as a D. Take it back! The Terminator, well, the good news is it's better than Terminator 2. The bad news is it's still a bad game. It just looks like it. They could have had a lot of fun with this game. They really could have. They could have had a lot of fun with this game, but the platforming is off, the shooting is off, your characters, like the graphics aren't great. Especially for its time. Like when this game came out, you'd think that the graphics would, because other games were showcasing like, really great graphics for video games for the time. And this one, not so much. I gotta be honest with you. It's still, it's not like it's the worst game ever. It's just at the time for when this game came out, it should have been a lot better, a little bit more polished than it was. but it is better than Terminator 2. I'll give this game a D at least. It's not quite enough, but I'll give it a D. Mindscape with their interesting titles for the NES. But you can cleanse the palate by checking out some of these other great videos from some of these other great companies for the NES. Some great games out there. Find out where I rank them, and I would love to hear your comments on them as well. So thank you for checking this out. We'll see you again real soon.